Hey everybody, welcome to the Rosalie Elliott Show. I am Rosalie. I'm so glad you're here. We're all about world music and psychology, and I want to check out a band named Alice in Chains. Sounds pretty intense. And a song called Nutshell. The whole title is intriguing, from the name of the band to the name of the song. Where are they from? Where is Alice in Chains from? I'm seeing a bunch of people, a bunch of reactors checking this out, so it's my turn. American rock band from Washington, right? Now, I am, for the sake of it being a fresh, blind, honest reaction, not going to know anything about them. I'm going to not listen to any of things ahead of time other than where they are from. So be patient with me if I miss some things and comment in the comment section. I'm saying things today that are just like completely common sense. Anyways, let me know in the comments why you like this song, what they're about. I'm going to go ahead and listen to the MTV Unplugged because I have a feeling if I were to look at the audio right now, you'd probably get on to me for not looking at the live. Why is Alice in Chains? And what are we talking about in a nutshell? Subscribe. Here we go. Ooh, I love those low notes. Ooh, I like that. Sounds like wailing, the vocalization here. You know what's fascinating to me? It's fascinating to me to have a song that is this, how do I say this? Poignant to the human experience and to our existential fears at a core, in a nutshell, if you were to put it in a song. And to have it's so beautifully composed. And then at the end, we kind of just clap and move on with life. And I'm not saying that it is bad to clap. These are wonderful musicians. They were here, MTV Unplugged, presenting their song. People love this band, so there's clapping, and naturally there's praise. But it's so funny to me, almost like a dichotomy, to have something that is so sad, and then we cheer and clap. And it almost works well with the irony or the contrast that we find even within the song. I find the musical composition was perfect for what I think is being conveyed here. I love how the gentleman on the acoustic guitar who was picking the bass line, who was creating the bass for all of this, doing so on I believe, an acoustic guitar versus your electric bass, really added so much volume and dynamics to the chord progression that was being played on the main guitar. To then have these beautiful finger-picking melodies that weaved through that whole composition like a red thread. And it created this duality in my mind between the bass notes and the high musical composition that really painted a picture of what this song may be about, again, in my perception. Also, the way he would vocalize the oohs, beautifully high notes, great voice, almost sounded like crying to me. And this interlude, this vocal, lyricless interlude, really drove home the point, the pain of this song. Interesting that not once in the lyrics does he actually say the word nutshell, even though that's what this song is called. And I find that awesome because a lot of times we will have songs where they have a name that is made up of a word or phrase that we will at some point find in the song. Not always, but that often happens. Here we have a song that has a very specific title that's very intriguing, but it's not once mentioned. Perhaps because the whole song is putting in a nutshell what he feels, what people feel, right? Because when we say, well, in a nutshell, that's our way of saying, basically, if I have to summarize it and put it into a small, compact form, in a nutshell, right? It's this idiom we use in English or American English. However, ironically, to say something in a nutshell is interesting to me because a nut is something that is hard to crack, but that we try to crack. The nutshell is something we're trying to break through to get to the good stuff, the nut inside. And it's hard to do so. So I feel like there's also a lot of poetry behind even just that idea of trying to present something in a nutshell to communicate something that is actually really hard to crack. And that may be me getting a little too poetic and philosophical, but bear with me. That's where my mind is. We chase misprinted lies. That, to me, make me think of the media. And this is my interpretation, right? We look at newspapers, magazines back then. Now, even more so, the media, social media, the news, where we are chasing those lies, misprinted. They are falsely printed. They are lies. They're incorrect. They're not printed correctly. And we chase them. We're pursuing it. We face the path of time. And this is very specific to me to what existential fears and the human experience is about. We are ultimately chasing time. We run around following our clock, following our schedules, following our phones of what time it is and what we got to do next. We are so trapped by time, which actually is a man-made concept. Sure, the sun rises and sets, and there are cycles even in nature as old as time. But we were the ones who created this idea of time, and now we're chasing it and we're chasing after it. And ironically, that is the rarest, most precious asset that we have, the thing we are running out of, the thing we're trying to make sense of. Yet I fight, and yet I fight this battle all alone. No one to cry to, no place to call home. My God, if there's ever such a lyric that puts in a nutshell what human loneliness and suffering looks like, the ultimate pain when you have no one to cry to, no place to call home. We have a lot of suffering in this world. When you are assaulted, when there is war, when you have no food or no shelter or clothing, when you go through a divorce, when you lose a child, all of these sufferings are immeasurable and painful. And they vary in intensity and they vary in the way we experience them. Me losing something will not feel the same to me as it does to you. We all have a different way that we process and heal and cope in healthy or unhealthy ways. But there are various levels of suffering. I would say one of the hardest that ties most deeply into our existential fears is both our impending death, which fits in with his path of time reference, our death anxieties that come into play, conscious and subconsciously, but also loneliness, which also ties into our existential fears. We want to make meaning of our life and be free, have freedom to express ourselves and chase happiness and do something with our life. Make this make sense. I'm already terrified of death or there being something or nothing after, but at least if I can make sense of the time I have, but not even that makes sense. Not even that is something I can hold on to. So there's this fear and this need for freedom, but there's also a fear of loneliness. And that also could tie into our death anxieties because that ultimately is the loneliest place you'll be, because that's a step we have to take by ourselves ultimately. And loneliness ties into that core existential fear that we have. Is there someone that I can call, that I can run to? And so with all the suffering that I just listed, immeasurable pain, I would think that one of the greatest is when you don't have anyone to go through with. You might be in constant chronic pain, and that's immeasurable suffering that one can't put a name on. But if you have someone there to comfort you, even though the pain doesn't go away, there might be at least a hint of comfort in knowing I'm not alone. When you lose a loved one, immeasurable, unspeakable pain. But if you have someone you can call home, at least there's still a glimmer of hope. When you are going through war or assault or sickness or a diagnosis, whatever suffering you can name, if at least you have someone you can cry to, there's at least a glimmer of hope that you're not alone. Okay, that there's some type of community or comfort. So to say this battle all alone, I fight this battle, no one to cry to. If you have no one, that is the loneliest place to be. And if you are lonely right now, just as a side note, please seek help. It's okay if the person you seek, you reach out to, like say an organization, a hospital, call 911 or call the suicide hotline. If you are in a place where you can't no more, I'd rather you call a stranger, a professional, safe stranger, like at the suicide hotline, like your local hospital. I'd rather you call a safe professional who is at first a stranger, who may become a friend. Better that and at least someone you can cry to than having no one at all. Nobody should have to go through life and through suffering alone. We all need a home. And a home is more than just a house. A home is more than just a building. And then the wailing, the vocalization here that just sounded like crying. My gift of self is raped. That wording is very intense. When something is assaulted like that, something is violently taken, my gift of self, that is a gift we're given. Ourselves, unique, one of a kind, individual fingerprint, unique DNA, unlike any other. My privacy is raked. So we're using words here that are very violent and intense and brutal. Yet I find, repeating in my head, if I can't be my own, I'd feel better dead. Ooh, very poetic, very powerful, and very painful. To say, I keep telling myself, I found this. I'm repeating it in my head. If I can't be my own, I'd feel better dead. I'd feel better being dead, whatever that's going to feel like. Nothing, heaven, hell, whatever that will feel like would be better than if I can't be my own. And that too, very powerful and very specific in my mind to our existential fears, both for that of loneliness, our fear of loneliness, which ties into our existential fears, as well as not being ourselves, which ties into the desire for freedom. When we look at existential theory, we look at existentialism. There's this desire to be free, physically free, to move about, free to feel, free to think, free to create, free to love and be yourself, free to pursue happiness, to make meaning of this life, to decide who you are, what you are. If I can't be my own, this is the most horrendous form of enslavement, where you are not just captive to a drug or a person or a circumstance. You are a slave even to yourself. You can't even be your own self. You don't even belong to you. Right? And that can be caused by various shackles. That could be caused by an addiction that is so bound you, that is that is so bound and enslaved you that you can't be your own. You can't use your free will. You can't decide what you will and won't do because you're addicted and overpowered by that substance. The same goes for toxic relationships where you feel you're overpowered by a person making toxic choices and harmful choices where now you can't be yourself anymore. You're not your own. You don't belong to you. Different circumstances and situations in life that can cause that, but that is immeasurable pain. And then it goes back to the lyricless vocalization that goes back to crying. Again, beautifully carried through the whole guitar finger picking, the drums, the consistency of the drums, the bass line. Painful song. I mean, the ultimate song when it comes to loneliness and the human experience. Psychologically very deep and more powerful than I expected. I knew it must be good because various reactors are checking it out. What does this song mean to you? What are you taking away from this? Are there other songs by Alice in Chains that I should be listening to? The band name itself, intriguing and intense. But I am impressed by how poetically they put in words human suffering and loneliness and existential fears and struggles and desires. And within that pain, a song that leaves on such a painful note of crying, if you will, if we're going to take the lyricless vocalization as a form of crying and wailing, it ends on that. It doesn't end with a verse of hope. So now, for us to not end it like this in this video, we're going to need to decide what is our verse 3 going to be. This song is powerfully and poetically put in words, human suffering and loneliness and distress. What is our third verse going to be? And that's something that every one of us is going to have to write ourselves. You're going to have to decide what your song of life is going to end on. Is it going to leave off on the suffering? Are you going to write a third verse, if you will, in your life of hope, of reaching out to someone so you're not alone, so you don't have to suffer alone, taking back yourself? That's a decision nobody else can make for you. And that doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Reach out to professionals. If you are struggling or if you are considering hurting yourself, call the suicide hotline. Reach out to the local hospital. There's no shame in needing help, friend. We all need help. We all need somebody. Reach out for help. If there are people you know you can trust in your circle of friends or family, reach out to them. Speak up. This is where you're going to have to write your own next verse and decide to show up for yourself, to take back. This goes for feeling enslaved to drugs, for being in a toxic relationship where you're being abused and you feel hopeless, you feel like you don't even belong to yourself anymore. Take yourself back. You have the power. You are able because you matter. You are so loved. That's my reaction in a nutshell, my response to that. What do you think? Comment below, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next ride.